Behind the famous singer and amazing voice that made Led Zeppelin special was a man who had more troubles than most fans ever knew. Robert Plant's life story has been full of great things. But it was also filled with car crashes, sadness, death, and personal problems that almost made him stop singing forever. Even when he was super famous, bad things kept happening to him. Many years later, Plant is still one of rock's most famous people. But people still wonder, after everything that happened to him, where did his life journey take him in 2025? Robert Plant was born on August 20, 1948 in England's Black Country, that tough factory area near Birmingham known for its smoky skies and dirty air. Plant remembered his childhood as a happy time. Most of that happiness came from his mother, Annie Celia Plant, whose energy and joy filled their house. She loved to sing, she loved to dance, and her happiness rubbed off on her son. His father, also named Robert, had once played the violin, but stopped playing music to take care of the family. He was a civil engineer who had served in the Royal Air Force during the war. But when it came to music, he didn't understand why his son was so crazy about it. To him, singing wasn't a real job. He wanted his boy to follow a safer path, something like being an accountant. Annie's influence was different. She was part Romani, and Robert loved that side of her personality. Her wild curly hair, her creativity, and her free spirit left their mark on him. By the time Robert was 9, he was already pretending to be Elvis, singing into his hairbrush. As a teenager, his father would take him to a local blues club where he got his first taste of being on stage. In 1963, when he was just 15, he found himself on stage almost by accident. He often hung around his friend's band, helping them carry their equipment, but never brave enough to sing. One night when their singer got sick before a show, the band pushed Robert to fill in. Nervous but willing, he took the microphone. What happened that night depends on who tells the story. Plant remembered it as scary, saying he couldn't even look at the audience until the songs were over. But to those watching, it was a different story. They saw a teenager who acted confident. His loud voice filled the room and grabbed everyone's attention. Whatever he felt inside, the crowd only saw raw talent. That night was the beginning of Plant's journey with local bands, and he soon found himself wanted by many groups. But school and music didn't work well together. The more he played, the less he cared about classes. His parents got worried. His grades got worse, fights at home got bigger, and his teachers got tired of him missing school. Though he barely passed his tests, he was eventually kicked out. By 17, Robert Plant decided to leave home and chase music for good. To keep himself alive while chasing his dream, he worked odd jobs, construction, laying road surfaces, even a job at Woolworths. At the same time, he was making singles with CBS Records and jumping between different bands. It was during this time that he met drummer John Bonham, a friendship that would change everything that came next. The two clicked right away, both musically and personally. And in 1966, they started the Band of Joy, mixing rough blues with the trippy sounds that were popular in the late 60s. When Zeppelin first went on tour in 1968, Plant was barely out of his teens and the sudden rush of fame hit him hard. Critics were especially mean to him, often making fun of how he looked and how he sang. The words hurt deeply, and Plant, already unsure of himself, became so worried that manager Peter Grant often hid bad reviews from him just to get him on stage. That self-doubt carried into his role in the band. Plant was afraid to write lyrics and was even thought of as the weak link by Jimmy Page. At one point, he was paid less than the group's tour manager and his name didn't show up on their first album. But as Led Zeppelin's fame exploded, their shows got bigger, louder, and a lot more crazy. With that craziness came problems no one in the band could have predicted. One of the wildest examples happened in Milan, Italy. About 15,000 fans packed into the place and the energy turned dangerous fast. The promoters begged the band to calm the audience down as fires broke out in the stands. Robert Plant kept asking the crowd to stop, but his begging did nothing. Soon, hundreds of riot police stormed in with tear gas, water cannons, and clubs. Fans rushed toward the stage. Smoke filled the air and the band had to drop their instruments and run to safety. On stage, however, Plant was everything a rock frontman could be. With his wild blonde hair, half-unbuttoned shirts, and endless energy, he became the very picture of a rock god. He was always moving, dancing, clapping, throwing his body into the music. His magnetic presence helped define what it meant to be a frontman in rock. But being a frontman came with a heavy price. Singing at that level was brutal on the body, especially the vocal cords. Many singers eventually need surgery to fix damage, and Robert Plant was no different. His later shows were more held back compared to the raw screams of his early years, convincing many that surgery forced him to protect his voice more carefully. The bigger Zeppelin got, the more dangerous things became. Fame brought love from fans, but it also brought scary attention. Jimmy Page's interest in the occult and Aleister Crowley caused backlash and even death threats. Their publicist Danny Goldberg remembered that these threats became common during the 1973 American tour. At one point, John Paul Jones thought about leaving the band because of them. Writer Mick Wall noted that Page himself was followed by crazy fans, including Lynette Squeaky from, a devoted follower of Charles Manson. Another man was arrested after authorities found out he believed Page was meant to die and wanted to do it himself. As a result, the band traveled with heavy security. Their group included bodyguards, some of them ex-FBI agents, who followed the group around the clock. Manager Peter Grant put guards at hotel elevators, while Page, who couldn't sleep, kept his own security posted outside his door at all times. Even with that level of protection, Zeppelin couldn't escape trouble. On July 29, 1973, the final night of their American tour, disaster hit. Before the band's last Madison Square Garden show, tour manager Richard Cole opened their safety deposit box at New York's Drake Hotel, only to find it empty. Over $200,000, money from the tour, had disappeared. Cole later remembered his shock when he found nothing inside but passports. He screamed knowing what it meant. The FBI was called right away, but the timing couldn't have been worse. As the band played their last show, agents searched their hotel rooms. The safe hadn't been broken open, meaning the thief had a key. Suspicion fell on people close to them. Cole was even given a lie detector test which he passed, but no suspect was ever found. The theft made national headlines, and many years later the case is still unsolved. Still, author Bob Spitz noted that several people close to the band believed Peter Grant himself had planned the theft. By 1975, Led Zeppelin stood at the very top of their success. Their latest album, Physical Graffiti, had just been released to great reviews, and amazingly, all of their previous records climbed back onto the charts as well. They were conquering North America with a massive tour, and even managed to sell out 5 nights in a row at London's Earl's Court Arena, the biggest venue in Britain at the time. The band seemed unstoppable, but everything changed that summer. While taking a short break from the road, Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, and their families went on vacation to the Greek island of Rhodes. On August 4th, tragedy struck. Robert's wife, Maureen, was driving a rental car along a mountain road when she lost control. The car fell off the cliffside and smashed into a tree. Inside were Robert, Maureen, their children, Carmen and Carrick, and Jimmy Page's young daughter, Scarlett. The accident was brutal. Both children broke bones. Robert's body was thrown against Maureen, leaving him with a broken leg and elbow. Maureen's injuries were so bad that Robert first thought she had died. Her skull and pelvis were broken and she needed a blood transfusion. To make matters worse, they were stuck in a remote area. Their only lifeline was a local farmer who rushed the injured family to the hospital in the back of his fruit truck. Everyone survived, but the road to getting better was long. Robert's leg was put in a cast that went from his hip down to his toes. He spent 6 months in a wheelchair and another year leaning on a cane. The carefree energy that once defined him was gone, replaced with a quieter, more serious outlook. The crash not only hurt him physically, but also forced Led Zeppelin to cancel the rest of their tour. Despite his injuries, Plant refused to give up on music. When the band recorded their 7th studio album, Presence, he performed while propped up on crutches. Recording sessions were tough. At one point, his crutch caught on a cable and sent him crashing to the floor. Jimmy Page, normally quiet, dashed across the room to help him up, a moment Plant would later remember with a mixture of humor and thankfulness. After being cleared of any more damage to his ankle, he wheeled himself back into the studio, recorded the soaring vocals for Achilles' Last Stand, and rolled right back out. By 1977, Led Zeppelin had taken back their top spot. 7 of their albums sat high on the charts, and they were deep into a blockbuster U.S. tour. But everything fell apart in New Orleans on July 26. Just after arriving in the city, Robert got a frantic phone call from Maureen. Their young son, Carrick, was very sick with a sudden virus. 2 hours later, another call came. Carrick had died on the way to the hospital. The news shattered Robert. The rest of the tour was immediately cancelled, and he returned home to grieve. The bond between father and son had been especially close, something Robert's own father described as unbreakable. The loss left him questioning everything, including his place in the band. He admitted that he no longer wanted to be part of Led Zeppelin and thought seriously about walking away from music altogether. The tragedy also marked the day he decided to sober up, turning his focus back to his family. Adding to his heartbreak, only John Bonham came to Carrick's funeral. Robert began to question his relationships with Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones, wondering if the distance between them was more than just geography or culture. Still, he eventually blamed it on their different upbringings. He and Bonham were Midlands men, while Page and Jones came from the South. This period also marked Robert's decision to give up cocaine, a drug he admitted had poisoned both his body and his mind. He realized that it had twisted his personality, making him paranoid and possessive. Walking away from it felt like taking back control of his life. At his lowest, he even thought about quitting music completely and becoming a teacher, something he thought would be far more honest and grounding than the chaos of rock stardom. But his bandmates weren't ready to let him go. It was John Bonham, his closest friend, who stood by him in the darkest moments, offering the comfort and loyalty Robert desperately needed while he mourned. At the same time, Jimmy Page reminded him of the bond they shared as a band and insisted that Zeppelin wouldn't exist without him. Page encouraged him to take the time he needed, but also to come back when he was ready. Robert Plant eventually did return to the band. However, by the spring of 1978, cracks were beginning to show in Led Zeppelin. And 13 months later, tragedy struck. In 1980, Bonham collapsed during a performance and was taken to the hospital. The band brushed it off as eating too much before a show, but the press suspected drug and alcohol abuse. On September 24th of that year, just before a scheduled rehearsal, Bonham's drinking caught up with him. After a long night of heavy drinking, reportedly more than a quart of vodka, he passed out. The next day, he was found dead, having choked on his own vomit. The loss was devastating. 2 months later, Led Zeppelin issued a brief statement announcing they could not continue without him. For Robert Plant, the loss was personal as much as professional. He and Bonham had grown up together, learning the ropes of life and music side by side. Reflecting on their bond, Plant described them as young, loud, confident, and often wrong, but always together. Bonham's death was for Plant the end of Led Zeppelin itself. He told Rolling Stone, "The band stopped existing the moment Bonzo was gone." More than a bandmate, Bonham had been his closest friend. In the aftermath, Plant needed a fresh start. On A Life on the Road, he explained that stripping away the fancy things of fame felt necessary after losing someone so dear. Yet, music called him back, and help came from an unlikely source. Phil Collins, a lifelong admirer of Bonham, encouraged Plant to start a solo career. At the time, Collins's own hit In the Air Tonight was dominating radio, but he still made time to play drums on Plant's first solo record. On his podcast, Digging Deep, Plant remembered how Collins's energy in the studio was infectious, pushing him to find his footing as a solo artist. Their working together continued with Plant's second album, The Principle of Moments, released in 1983, and Collins even joined him on tour in North America. Plant would later describe Collins as a spirited, positive force who lifted him when he needed it most. But the road ahead brought new challenges. In the early 1990s, Plant faced a health scare that nearly silenced him for good. A London specialist warned him his voice would be gone within 6 months. So damaged that he wouldn't even be able to speak. It sounded like a career-ending verdict. Other singers from Elton John to Steven Tyler had bounced back from similar issues, and Plant refused to accept defeat. He got treatment and recovered, proving the dire predictions wrong. Despite the scare, he went on to release several more records throughout the 1990s and beyond, showing the strength that had defined his career from the very beginning. In December 2007, Plant joined Page, Jones and Jason Bonham for a 2-hour performance in London honoring Ahmet Ertegun of Atlantic Records. The night was a triumph. Fans were ecstatic and offers for a full reunion tour poured in, including one rumored to be worth $200 million. However, Plant refused. He believed the band had ended on a high note and didn't want to risk ruining Zeppelin's legacy. Jason Bonham remembered that after the show, he hugged Plant and asked about future concerts. Plant simply told him his father would have been proud. But Zeppelin had been a band built on 4 men, not 3. While fans kept hoping for more, Plant remained unmoved. He dismissed the idea of a reunion tour as nothing more than wishful thinking and even compared the notion to becoming a bunch of bored old men following the Rolling Stones around. His resistance frustrated Page, who publicly admitted he was tired of waiting. Despite occasional rumors, Plant never wavered. In 2009, he was recognized for his solo work when he was named a Commander of the Order of the British Empire with the honor presented by Prince Charles, now King Charles III. A year later, he brought back his old project, Band of Joy, this time with new members. The group did well briefly before Plant disbanded it again in 2011. By 2012, he was ready for something different. He introduced a new group called the Sensational Spaceshifters, debuting in Gloucester that May. Among its rotating lineup of musicians was American singer Patty Griffin. During this time, Plant revealed that he and Griffin were romantically involved. Their relationship lasted over a year, but by 2014, it came to an end, leading Plant to return to England. He later admitted the breakup left a mark with his album Carry Fire, capturing much of that emotional weight. Plant never stopped creating. In 2018, he was honored with the Lifetime Achievement Award at the UK Americana Honours and Awards. A year later, he launched yet another project, Saving Grace, a stripped-down acoustic group. Their plans for a US tour in 2020 were interrupted by the global pandemic, but the band became yet another chapter in Plant's long journey. Beyond his music, Plant has also stayed deeply connected to his community. In 2013, he helped save the Belfry, a beloved music venue in Wishaw, by contributing to a community purchase plan. In 2020, he donated to a small clothing company in his hometown of Kidderminster that was making scrubs for hospitals during the pandemic. Today, Robert Plant's influence remains undeniable. His voice, style, and presence continue to inspire new generations of musicians. While he may have closed the book on Led Zeppelin long ago, his passion for music and the impact he's left on it remains as powerful as ever.